Introduction from a Hand-Book of Volapük by Charles E. Sprague, Member of the Academy of Volapük, President of the Institute of Accounts. Read for the LibriVox Language Learning Collection, Volume 3. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Nicholas James Bridgewater. Volapük is designed to serve as a means of communication between persons whose native languages are not the same. The hope has often been expressed that one of the great national languages may, by common consent, be selected as a universal language. But there is not the slightest probability that this great advantage will be voluntarily given to one nation, or that any one of the great powers can ever impose its language on others. Volapük is one of numerous attempts at solving the problem of a common language. Without entering into a discussion of their merits, it is sufficient to say that no other attempt has ever passed beyond the experimental stage or been actually used to any considerable extent for the communication of thought. Volapük has now become so widely diffused that it can no longer be treated as a mere project, and some acquaintance with its history and the general principles of its construction will be desired by educated persons. This world language was invented and first published in 1879 by Johann Martin Schleyer, a German and a priest of the Roman Catholic Church, who had become a very accomplished linguist. The system is entirely his production, and has not been modified in any essential point. His aim was, first, to produce a language capable of expressing thought with the greatest clearness and accuracy. Second, to make its acquisition as easy as possible to the greatest number of human beings. He resolved to seek this end by observing the processes of the many languages with which he was acquainted, following them as models wherever they are clear, accurate, and simple, but avoiding their faults, obscurities, and difficulties. The material and the form, or the dictionary and the grammar, call upon different mental faculties. One's stock of words is retained by exercise of the memory. Therefore, the radicals or root words were generally so chosen by him from existing languages that the greatest number of persons might have the fewest unfamiliar words to memorize. Since English is spoken as a mother tongue by more millions than any other language, he took from it more root words, with or without modification, than from any other, or about 40% of the whole. The selection is limited by such considerations as brevity, distinctness, and ease of utterance, difficult and unusual sounds and combinations being excluded. Thus, in selecting a word for the idea man, the English word is found very suitable, especially as it is substantially the same in all other Teutonic tongues, and it has been adopted but sounded as in German. The word house or Haus for the idea of a dwelling is found objectionable for several reasons. The h is to be avoided because unpronounceable by some nations, and the s is already appropriated for the plural termination. The Teutonic roots being barred out, recourse is had to the Latin, and dom is selected. We are also familiar with this in English, as in domestic. In hand, again, we have the same trouble with h, and also with the two consonants coming together, the plural hands being unpronounceable by certain peoples. The Latin root man will not help us here, because man is already appropriated. Therefore, the transposed form nam is adopted, slightly assisting the memory. As to grammar, the first requisite is regularity, and the second is simplicity. There was, before the inventor, a choice between the inflectional and the analytical modes, whether to express the relations between words by modifications in form, or by separate words as connectives. He inclined to the former, and his language is rather inflectional than analytical. It has 4 cases: the nominative being the unmodified form, and the genitive, dative, and accusative, designated by vowel endings. In selecting these endings, the inventor has greatly aided the memory by employing the first 3 vowels a, e, in their regular order. In the verb, the distinctions of tense are denoted by the vowel series a, e, I, o, u at the beginning, while the persons are distinguished by affixing the pronouns ob, I, ol, thou, etc. The prefixed p marks the passive voice. The remaining inflectional forms are provided for by simple and regular terminations. For some time after the appearance of Schleier's grammar, his adherents were few, and his project was ignored by the scientific and literary world. It spread first to Austria, where it awakened considerable interest, and where the first society for its propagation was formed at Vienna in 1882. Until 1884, its adherents outside of the German-speaking countries were very few and scattered. In that year it invaded Holland and Belgium, and a great many societies sprang up in those countries. In 1885, Dr. August Kerckhoffs, professor in the School of Higher Commercial Studies at Paris, introduced it to the French nation by several articles, lectures, and treatises. This created a great sensation in France, and a strong national association pour la propagation du Volapük was formed, which numbers such men as Francisque Sarcey, Émile Gautier, and Dr. Haller. Professor Kerckhoffs aroused enthusiasm not only in France, but in other countries where his works were circulated. Spain was the next, followed by Italy and Portugal. During 1885 and 1886, the countries of the north, Sweden, Denmark, and Russia, also received the new language. Thus the extension of Volapük has been geographical, and the English-speaking peoples are the last of the great European races to be affected by it. In each country, as a rule, its popularization has immediately followed the publication of a grammar peculiarly suited to its people. Professor Kerckhoffs, some months ago, estimated the number of persons who have studied Volapük at 210,000. This may be somewhat too high, but the number is certainly very large. In Vienna alone, the classes during the winter of 1886-7 were attended by 2,500 students. 138 societies for its cultivation have been organized in different places. 11 periodicals are now published, devoted primarily to Volapük. At Constance, Breslau, Madrid, Paris, Vienna, Munich, Milan, Puerto Rico, Stockholm, Arbibro, Denmark, and Antwerp, the youngest being 4 months old and the oldest 6 years. Most of these contain articles in the language of the country as well as in Volapük, but 3 of them, one being a humorous paper, are exclusively in Volapük. The bibliography of the subject, as given at length in Le Volapük, No. 10, comprises 96 books in 13 languages. This does not include articles in periodicals, nor Schleier's single-sheet compendiums in various languages, nor works merely announced as forthcoming. 2 general assemblies or congresses of the advocates of Volapük have been held. The first at Friedrichshafen in August 1884, the second at Munich in August 1887. The third is to take place at Paris, probably in August 1889. The Congress of 1887 established a threefold organization: a general association of the supporters of Volapük, Volapüker Club Valamik, an academy of Volapük, Kadem Volapüka, a central organ, Volapükerblad Zenodik. Schleier's own Weltsprachblatt, published at Constance, was designated as the organ, and its name has been changed accordingly. Each of these organizations has its officers, Schleier remaining at the head of the whole movement. The director of the academy is Professor Kerckhoffs. His colleagues number at present 17, from various nations: Germany, Austro-Hungary, Spain, Italy, Portugal, Holland, England, the United States, Russia, Syria. The Academy is expected to edit the standard dictionary and grammar, to authorize new words, to adopt any necessary changes, and to give their sanction to approved works of instruction. The most obvious application of Volapük is for international correspondence, especially commercial correspondence, which is numerically the most important. It will require no argument to convince the business world that a common language, if easily learned and once established, will be an immense facilitation of commerce. This modest claim is all that is necessary to put forth on behalf of Volapük at present. If firmly established for this purpose, the extension of its usefulness into the fields of science, diplomacy, and literature may safely be left to the future to determine, as well as whether it will ever be used by travellers. It will, in any event, be watched with great interest, and its rise and progress will form a novel and curious chapter of history. In issuing the 5th edition of this work, the author takes occasion to thank the numerous readers who have aided him with their suggestions and have enabled him to make each successive edition more perfect. The present one has been conformed to the latest edition of Schleier's dictionary, the principal changes being in respect to the endings an, el, iel, am, and ot. End of an introduction from a Handbook of Volapük by Charles E. Sprague. Read by Nicholas James Bridgewater.